Welcome to Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, your Day with a Podcast, brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, northwest flow going to dominate the pattern really today and right up all the way through next Monday. That's going to be the main feature weather-wise across the northern and central Rockies and the northern and central plains. The first wave of Pacific energy and moisture with this next pattern is going to be coming through today and especially overnight into Wednesday. We're seeing some snow developing in the mountains overnight and early this morning, some wind on the plains. And like the Sunday system, we're going to not see this as a very moist system. But it will produce a little bit of light snow on the plains, heavier snow in the high country. There's going to be some areas of Colorado and New Mexico, especially parts of the I-25 corridor, Denver to Castle Rock to Colorado Springs down into northern New Mexico. Kind of need to watch for some accumulating snow with this system as it slides through the area. Lighter snows will be noted elsewhere. Strong northwest flow, as we showed you yesterday, will be the key weather feature between, let's say, Thursday night and next Monday, where we see good snow in the northern mountains of the central and northern Rockies, the northern end of the central Rockies, as we showed you yesterday, along and north of I-70 is where the mountains are going to be seeing some snow. Then, as we get into next week, there's going to be a major readjustment across the northern hemisphere. What that will do is allow Pacific air to flood the zone, really across the lower 48. So temperatures which are very, very cold across the Great Lakes, parts of the Northeast, Midwest, really all of the lower 48 for about 3 days next week. We'll see a moderation in the weather, but that is not an indication of a big change back to warmer weather. It's an interval, because we're going to see winter reloading, especially in the western half of the U.S. by next weekend, and we'll show you why that's going to happen. Now we're getting a lot more in the way of winter photos coming in. Long's Peak blowing snow as winds along the divide really picking up and moving around some of that fresh snow, and not a lot of color as that sun angle is getting lower and lower now, so we're kind of leaving that fire sky season we had in October and November, as the colors are more brief now. Before we get to regular weather, we have to talk space weather. We have a giant sunspot complex that is coming around and starting to face Earth. Now, over the last few days, we've had some X-class flares. X-class flares are your strongest, and some coronal mass ejections. And this sunspot complex, as you can see right here, is very, very large. This is a huge sunspot. So we've got to watch it because it's already showing signs of a lot of activity. And for you Aurora watchers, we do have a G2 moderate geomagnetic storm predicted for the 3rd and the 4th. And as you can see right here, here's Earth, here's the coronal mass ejection. Now, it doesn't show a direct hit like the last one, but a glancing blow. But there's likely more to come because of that big sunspot complex rotating and beginning to face Earth. So sky watchers, keep that in mind. Hard to see a lot of detail in the satellite photos this morning, but we do see a fetch of Pacific moisture ahead of this upper level low that's sliding southeast. There's not a lot of moisture with it initially. You can see the cold air sinking far across the deep south with those stratus clouds and some fog and some chilly temperatures there. Not a lot else going on other than some high mid-level clouds. But we're already seeing this Pacific moisture feeding into the higher elevations of some high elevation snow overnight and early this morning in some areas. As we take a look at where we're going to be, this is where we're going to start today with that upper level low about over Boise heading southeast. I want you to notice something because this is something I'm going to show you at the end of the video. We've got the Hudson Bay polar vortex really well situated and strong right now in that particular area, and it will be here for the next few days, but there's going to be changes up into Canada, the northern hemisphere. We'll show you here in a moment. So we have that northwest flow, The troughiness across the U.S. keeping a very wintry weather pattern. So today and by tomorrow, this is this morning by noon, around noontime today, around noontime Wednesday, it slides southeast and it drags colder Canadian air in and some Pacific moisture. Very similar to what we saw Sunday. Almost a repeat performance, although this system is a little bit more moist. You can see the north-south formation of the polar vortex right up here right now, and the deep cold still streaming into the northern tier. We're going to see moisture spread out with this system. This is the precipitation forecast from today through Thursday morning. So I mentioned that I-25 corridor right here. So if traveling south of Denver, through the Springs, into Santa Fe, even into the mountains of Albuquerque here, northern areas of New Mexico, and all of the I-70 corridor of Colorado, a good slug of snow, and some of that will get out into the plains. We also have this other area of overrunning snows from Montana into South Dakota and North Dakota, then orographic snows into the mountains of Wyoming, northern Utah, and notice the gray areas. The gray areas is where a little bit of snow will come off the mountains and onto the plains. Not a lot of it, but enough to make things slick. So that means I-80, that means I-70, that means Interstate 90. And then, of course, if you're going to travel over the mountain passes, over the next 48 hours, you're going to encounter some winter driving conditions. Then we take a look at what's going to happen as we get into Friday and the weekend. We have the Hudson Bay low, and we have this elongation. Notice it's elongating, and the axis is not so north-south like it is now, but this axis is kind of going and shifting more west to east. This is important as what's going to evolve. You get a very strong temperature gradient forming as that polar vortex stretches west to east. And as I showed you yesterday, with the air moving over the water, then coming down across British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest into the Rockies, this brings us fetches of energy and moisture and strong winds aloft. Strong winds aloft not only mean strong winds horizontally, because something happens in the atmosphere is strong horizontal winds will lead to vertical motions of the atmosphere, causing the atmosphere to go up. And when that happens, and then you add the terrain that the winds have to cross, you add the moisture from the Pacific, then you have a very active pattern in the mountains. So this is Friday, this is Saturday. Strong flow comes across the area. And this is best represented by the winds. By Friday morning, watch up here with what the winds are doing at 30,000 feet. So that's Friday morning. This is by Friday afternoon. This is by Saturday morning. And this is by Sunday into Monday. The winds aloft do weaken, but the fetch of moisture is deep. And as I showed you yesterday, you have this pattern where the major mountain ranges get into the northwest flow with decreasing amounts of mountain snow as you head east. Nonetheless, very, very impressive amounts. Snow showers will also come out into the plains in this pattern where the air is colder along the colder air boundary, which will be right along here. But this is certainly a really good snow producer for the high country, as I showed you yesterday. Then we get the warm up. Notice what's going on up here. See the stretching of the cold? It's now west to east, not north to south like it is now. This allows Pacific air into the nation. So this is going to allow temperatures, especially between Tuesday and probably Friday of next week, across the lower 48 to warm up. The exception is going to be the northern tier where it's still going to be in the colder air. But Pacific air is going to bring a warming trend across the lower 48 next week. However, I told you there's a lot going on up here, and there is. As we go and take a step further, by next Friday, we see this next low coming in the Pacific Northwest. We still have this zonal flow across the United States, but it's a lot looking different here. Basically, this vortex stretches and splits. Now we have two pockets of very cold air in the higher latitudes instead of one cohesive one. So as this vortex splits, this is going to kind of change things up by late next week and the following weekend and change things up to make it more stormy. as this vortex breaks into two pieces. What this vortex up here is going to do is basically cause a Pacific wave train of storms to form out here in the North Pacific and come this way. This is going to cause weather up here in the northeastern United States. Going to get really busy, and that's going to make us stay on our toes as we get into the weekend after this one. So if we compare, so let's compare where we are now to where we're going to be later on. Notice that north-south axis here with the cold. We get it stretched out as we're seeing right there. And then if we look out to next Friday, see the difference in the northern latitudes? The breaking apart of the vortexes right here. So we're going to have two up there, and we really see this in the stratosphere. The current stratospheric warming event goes through a life cycle, then there's another stratospheric warming event towards the middle of December that's more up here. And notice instead of it being here, okay, it's going to be up over here. So that changes the dynamic. So the next stratospheric warming event is going to be different in terms of where the weather is going to be. The first stratospheric warming event was more directed towards the central and eastern United States. This one could have a bigger impact further west. We'll just have to see. Something to watch, as it will be something very interesting to watch in the next couple of weeks. Don't forget our regional travel forecasts updated in the afternoons. Have a good Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.